System change really goes beyond collective impact. The two can certainly work together, but changing the underlying systems is not a trivial thing. But this is an exciting early experience in us doing that. And since that time, we've put a lot more emphasis on really building the skills around system change, which I'll share a little bit later on. But we did embrace what I look back now, at that time we were calling it just being more strategic, but what it really was system thinking, not looking for just an individual program or an individual fix or a policy, but really looking at the overall system. And we were building on creating a common agenda and mutually reinforcing activities, but doing so in a way that people were stepping outside of their traditional roles in their program, in their nonprofit. We knew that if there was the general desire to help with the welfare of young kids, there were a lot of different efforts, but they weren't very aligned. There was an execution gap, so the goals weren't being met. So conceptually, we said we need better alignment. We talk about a Copernican shift in thinking, and that's when Copernicus said the universe does not revolve around the world, it revolves around the sun. And that was a huge shift in thinking. They begin saying, how are we going to win as a community? What is it going to take to fix the system? And then what's my role and who else can help? But we guide and facilitate people agreeing on some desired ends. What are some outcomes that can be broadly agreed? And then discussing the various means or pathways of getting there, and then looking at what are the enablers? What is it going to take in order for us to accomplish that? And the strategy map is built with objectives, which are not programs, they're not measures, they're the desired changes. And it's a system of changes that is linked through a reasonable cause and effect. We know it's not a linear process, but there's still things that can, if we can change this, that will help drive that. And so it really helps to tell the story. And in this process, we had the commitment of a lot of people who normally had not gotten together from many different sectors. And we spent a couple of days in some pretty intense, but really exciting discussions. And I remember one of the things that I said is we have all these people together and the ability to get more people to this table. This is our opportunity to move from blaming the system to changing the system. And we started by going through some different exercises and then boiled it down to 4 key outcomes that we wanted to see in the future as a result of this transformation. Reducing the demand for foster care, improving the safety and positive development of youth who are in foster care, increasing children achieving permanency if they get into the system. Let's get them out in permanent with their biological parents or adoption, and then improve the well-being of children after they transition out of care, hopefully in permanency, but continue to support them, and especially if they're aging out and not being in a permanent situation. And then we began the discussions of what are the kinds of changes that would be necessary, not by what does an individual program need to do, but if we were to step out of our little silos and look at what kind of changes would be needed. And so as we did that, and we ended up with the collective wisdom of a diverse group of people, we had a format that really enabled telling the strategy story of what people were trying to accomplish. And there was a shared understanding and ownership of this strategy. And it was a structure that allowed us to divide up the work so we could work in parallel on the details. And so a metaphor that I've started to use is this is like an orchestra or a large choral group that breaks down into sectionals, the violins or the altos, working on their parts, independent, but in parallel with the others, but they know what they're doing as part of a larger piece that they're bringing together. So we then did a series of go-to meetings. We systematically broke it down into groups. Each group, I believe, had 2, like hour-long or 90-minute sessions where we looked through these issues, we wordsmithed, we added new ones. Again, this brought together a lot of different people outside of their normal roles to focus on solutions. And it wasn't about each group saying, what's my logic model so I can get my funding? And they didn't have to come up with the answer of how to bring about the change, just this would be a really important change to achieve. and they weren't trying to say what they could get credit for.